Hopefully you can hear me even though there's lots of wind. I am traveling to get black walnuts. There is a river down here, and there's always lots of black walnuts near it. A tree, and gloves on because they will stain your hands. And there are a lot of them. See them on the tree here. That's what they look like. The ones that are really dark are usually filled with they usually have maggots and worms anyway, which is one reason why I think they develop such a hard shell to protect them. See? To protect the seed inside. Because this shell is so very, very hard. It's not like a regular walnut. It's super, super hard. And I think it's to protect it from the maggots because they cannot get through. They eat the fruit on the outside. So technically, still okay to eat. You just wash off the worms and clean it up and then crack open the nut. But I don't want to do that. So I try to avoid the ones that are on the ground and they're really, really dark and really bad looking, because those are the ones that usually have been ravaged by the maggots. This is just how black walnut got its name, because it's black. A very large tree, so it's sure to have plenty underneath it over here. They are everywhere if you just stop and look closely. They're all over the place. These here look kind of small and interesting. I don't know about that. I don't really want these ones. They're still edible. I just have read that when they get that black, it just makes them a little more bitter, I think. And that kind of grosses me out a bit is all. But it's still perfectly fine. In fact, it's probably easier to harvest that kind because this part here comes off so easily. It's everywhere though, which is good for me. And it's already turning yellow and being stained even with gloves on. When I go to do these at home, I'm going to have to wear, I think, really, really heavy duty rubber gloves. But I'm going to have to just accept that my hands will be stained for a while too. There's just so many around where I live, it's insane. It's free food. Phone has chickens nearby. But it's just silly not to gather all these, because they're delicious. So now I have 2 baskets full. I think this is enough for me, because it's just me. So now I have to just get them out of the husk, which can be easy or hard depending on how ripe they are. Let me get the nut out of here. It looks quite gross still, but I'm going to set it in here, and then I'm going to wash them all. And the husk, you don't want to compost this or anything because it has chemicals in it that will inhibit plant growth. You can just take off the husk. Sometimes I've heard about people putting them in the driveway and running them over with their car, or putting a pair of old shoes on and just stomping all over them. It's just whatever you need to do to get them off. This is kind of therapeutic for me, just to sit here and peel them all. So I don't mind doing it. It just gives me kind of something to do while I can think about things. So I kind of actually enjoy it, sitting in, getting the husks off these nuts. Let's see if I can find one that is maybe gross inside. You can see there might be some worms in there or something. Like I said, it doesn't really matter because it doesn't harm the nut inside. So I'm going to go through and get all of the husks off. I'm going to put another pair of gloves on so I have both hands to use. It stains everything and it turns black. I don't know if you can see my thumb here. It'll be black like that for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. It looks like I have really dirty hands because it's stained. This yellow will quickly turn to like a black color and it won't come off. In fact, you can use them as like a dye to dye fabric or other things. So it's not it's not something you want on you, so you have to wear gloves unless you want really badly stained, dirty looking hands for weeks and weeks and weeks. I had to move inside because it's getting kind of dark and going to rain. So I'm going to sit here and watch YouTube and do this. I had to put a second pair of gloves on just because it was seeping through still. So my fingernail, and these fingers are going to be black for probably a month. It's going to look terrible. So all my videos where I cook and do things, people are going to be like, man, your hands are so dirty. What's going on? It's just stained. So I'm going to go ahead and start doing this some more. I have about a quarter of this larger basket left to do here. But my bin is pretty much full, and I need to wash them off. So I'm going to set these aside to do later. Okay, now I'm just going to fill up my sink here with water, and I'm just going to move them around. This hand is probably going to be black before it's over with, so I took off the glove. You just got to move them around because they'll rub against each other and help peel off the coating that's left on there. You just want to get as much off of it as you can because you want these to dry and cure, and you don't want it to get moldy or any of that residual fruit on there to rot or anything. So you're just trying to give them a good rinse, move them about a lot, agitate them, just so they rub against each other. And then you'll drain the water and do this about 3 or 4 times until they become kind of clean. These here that are really clearly floating on the top, you don't want these because there's no nut inside. That's why it's floating, because there's air inside instead of the nut. The nut either doesn't develop at all or it's just a shriveled up something. So those ones you can go ahead and toss because there's nothing inside. So if they're floating, just get rid of them. Okay, I have rinsed them all off, and I'm going to go ahead and fill this back up and do it probably 2 or 3 more times. So now I am just agitating them around again, just rubbing them, kind of scrubbing them on each other so that they rub off the peel, because this is such a hard surface. As rubbing against each other will just peels off the rest of the fruit. So I'm just rubbing them together and agitating them in the water and then changing the water. This water is not only toxic to plants, but certain fish and worms and things. And it will also, it's an antifungal, but it will also stain your clothes and stain everything. So that's one reason why I'm doing this in a stainless steel sink, and why I am wearing old dirty clothes today. If you can tell, but they are a lot cleaner and have a lot more of the fruit pulp rubbed off, which is nice. So it'll help them cure, because you really have to cure them for about at least a month. Otherwise the nut inside, I'll show you when I go to crack them open. The nut inside is like juicy almost, and it doesn't have the same flavor. You can see my hand is getting darker and darker as time goes on, and you can also see the ends of my fingers where the nuts have scratched and ripped off the skin. So I probably should have worn gloves. This hand's going to be really, really weird looking, but at least I can wear those blue exam gloves and things like that and hide it for the next month or so, because it's going to be stained for at least probably 3 to 6 weeks. Just have them on some cardboard here because they'll stain everything if you lay them on like the floor. And they're just here to dry and cure for about a month. It's going to take at least a month before I want to open them and eat them. But I just need to make sure that they stay nice and dry and will not mold or rot or anything like that. And this is just the safest place for them. You have to make sure that they can't be accessed by squirrels or anything, because if a squirrel can chew through a wall to get to them, it will. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what they look like when you don't dry them and you crack them open. Okay, I am in my garage. You can see the difference in my hands. One is stained and the other one is not. This fan will be this color for quite a while. It'll probably get darker as the day progresses. I have a couple of them here, and these are so hard to crack. They're not like a normal walnut. They are almost impossible. But the best way to do it, I have found, just since I don't have a lot of other things, just hold it with hold them together like this so you don't hit your hand, and have the point up, the pointy side, and then just take a hammer and just crack at it. And a little bit lighter than that usually, so it doesn't break into so many pieces, but out comes your nut. And the nut is usually, if it's not cured, it's a little bit, it's juicy almost. It's kind of soft. And the flavor is a lot different. It's moist tasting, which is kind of odd for a nut. But it has a very strong walnut flavor still, actually. So these are going to be pretty good. You can see it's not easy to get into. the shell shatters a lot of the time, trying to get the nut meat out. And a lot of times, you just can't get that out without losing some of it flying across the room. So I think that's a lot of reason why people don't harvest these, even though they're free and they're everywhere. The shell is so hard. And it's such a messy process to harvest them and you get stained. But there's nothing like black walnut. And when you're cooking with them, you can use a lot less because the flavor is so intense. It really will put that walnut flavor in your food without having to use, you can use maybe even a quarter of the amount of nuts as if you would use English walnuts. They're a fruity kind of flavor. It's so good. I'm going to show you quickly one more here. I'm going to show one more time here. I'm going to hold it here. You can see the flesh inside that goes everywhere because it's kind of a mess. So these are kind of hard to get open, but they're delicious. And if I was doing this to actually sit here and do a bunch, I would get like a dish towel, wrap around it just to contain the nut meats that fly all over the ground and all over the place so that I wouldn't, lose out on them because I don't want to eat them off the garage floor. See, it's so hard to get out of there. I can't even get it out with my hands. I have to use a pick for nuts or something. It's just so hard to get out of there. It's so good though. The nut is, since it's not cured, the nut is that it's well hydrated and it fills the cavity. So when you let it cure for a bit, the nut shrinks up a little bit, or the meat, I guess I should say, the nut meat inside this part shrinks up a little bit. And it's a little easier to get out of the shell, I think. And the taste just develops and becomes wonderful. And of course, after you cure them, you can pretty much store them for months and months and months and months before you crack them open. Everyone has a wonderful day. I thought I would just share my little harvest of black walnuts.